Thanks for listening. This is Brian Hurley from Business Performance Improvement. The podcast Lean Six Sigma Bursts are short lessons, comments, Q&A, and insights. If you have a question, send your question through the Anchor app, and we might feature you on a future episode. Or contact me at biz-pi.com. As some of you might know, my background in school was that I also played college football. And so I have a strong passion for the Iowa Hawkeyes at the University of Iowa. I also have a website that I've built over the last couple of years dedicated to some of the history in the football and basketball program. Part of the merging of my passions around process improvement and the Iowa sports teams is I've written a couple articles related to data that I'd like to tell you about if you're interested in sports and seeing how it applies. Some are a little more technical and some are lighter, but there is an element of collecting and looking at data because I think that's an important thing that we should all be doing in our lives. So the first article I mentioned was where I looked at the perception that was going on in the fan base of whether the Iowa football team struggled when they would go over to the West Coast of the United States to play games against those teams or in those venues. And so what I did is I took the data and broke it down, and it appeared that some of the more higher profile games Iowa had lost or lost badly. But if you looked at the total output of the games and the total results, they didn't fare as badly as it seemed. They actually won some games that people often forget about. So again, trying to change perceptions about what is actually going on versus what our gut feel says or what our memory tells us about. And we'll encounter that in your business and professional life too, is there are perceptions about things and we want to have the data to back that up. Another article I did was around trying to predict whether Jordan Bohannon, who is one of the star Iowa basketball players, would break a certain record. And at first it was going to be just the Big Ten record for most three-pointers. And then as his years progressed and he got additional years due to COVID, he was looking to perhaps break the national record. And so what I did is I looked at the past history of how many games he played and how many three-pointers he made and looked at how could I model or simulate this data to see what are the chances with the number of games remaining that he will actually break the record and give it some kind of percentage. And that data does not follow a normal distribution pattern, so I had to model it against a non-normal distribution and simulate scenarios that he could have between 0 and 8 or 9 three-pointers in a game, with more likely being around 2 or 3, and look at that and say, what is the chances after 10 games or 12 games or 5 games or 2 games that he will break the record as it got closer and closer. And so you can see some of the data analysis I did on that one in an article. And I'll add all the links to these articles if you want to check them out. By the way, he did break the conference record, and then he fell 1 or 2 three-pointers short of of breaking the Power 5 record for the top 5 conferences. So there were some smaller school players that had more than that, but of the major schools, he fell just a bit short from the leader there. What I think the data provided was a little bit more reality to some of the predictions. I could see in comments on Twitter and things that people would say, oh yeah, he's definitely going to break it, or he's definitely not going to break it. And you can bring some data to it to say, well, there's a 20% chance or 30% chance or 50% chance that he'll do it. I think that is something we can also apply to our real lives and business life, to be able to say, what is the chance that I'm going to meet my schedule, or that we're going to get that many sales, or that we're going to reduce our scrap rates, or we're going to complete tasks in a certain amount of time. We can model our past behavior and use that as a prediction going forward. Third article was more recent. It looked at the Iowa women's basketball team, and the head coach is Lisa Bluter, and she made some comments after their loss in the NCAA tournament that there was an unusual number of lack of calls being made and lack of free throws in the game. And so I went back and pulled the data from the season and looked to see if that game had an unusually low number of calls or free throws. And it looks like that it is low, but it's not significantly low, and it's not even the lowest of the seasons for any of those games. So in that article, I talk about how I don't feel like that is a legitimate excuse, I guess, or rationale for why they lost the game. And then the fourth article I'll mention is back in 2020, University of Iowa football program had a lot of difficulties dealing with some player complaints about the way they've been treated in the program. And there seemed to be racial differences going on. And so what I did is I looked at some of the data for players that were signed and how many were retained through their careers, looking at percentage of those that finished and did not finish, broken out into black players and white and non-black players. And I could see a statistical difference using the chi-square test between those two groups. So it shows that there may be differences in how players are succeeding in the program and lasting, and maybe there might be some potential issues going on that they need to address, and which they have started to address, it seems. So I'll link all four of those articles if you're interested in seeing what I spend some of my time with outside of professional and nonprofit work. Curious to see if you have any thoughts or ideas around that, how that concept could apply. So if you have ideas of maybe an article or analysis or some data you'd like to look at to practice your skills and want some help with that, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to give you some guidance and point you in the right direction. Okay, hope you found that useful. Talk to you later. LeanSixSigmaDefinition.com has a list of glossary items about popular process improvement terms, along with the history of Lean and Six Sigma methods, and key influencers like Dr. Edward Stemming, Henry Ford, Taiichi Ono, Shigeo Shingo, and many more. You can also learn how to access affordable Lean and Six Sigma training and certification. Visit LeanSixSigmaDefinition.com.